Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, wherever you're tuning in. We are Slava and Jonathan, bringing you the Side Quest podcast, where we talk about character development, stories, and all things that are world building. And we occasionally take side quests, because, frankly, that's how conversations work. Just as a reminder, this whole show is spoiler heavy. So sit back, tune in, and join us on this episode of Side Quest.
Hello there, good listeners. This is Slava. I'm just jumping in here for a second before the episode starts to let you know that during the edit, we noticed a mistake that I made. I referred to Elokar a few times as Adolin. So a careful reader, a careful listener, somebody who's read the book might notice that right away. And for the rest of you, that's just an FYI. A few times when we're referring to Elokar, I say Adolin. That's all I wanted to tell you guys. Thanks again for listening. Thank you for joining us this week. And now, back to the episode.
Drum roll, please. Slava. Happy Way of Kings Wednesday.
Happy Way of Kings Wednesday to you.
We're breaking that fourth wall again where we're telling people that we're not recording live on Tuesdays where we quit our jobs in the morning just to do this podcast. They believed that, though.
They do. They should continue to believe that.
Yes.
Just like the Alethi believe something, right? What are we talking about?
What do they believe?
What am I talking about?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
The people who believe that the desolations are over, but I feel like they're about to start.
Mm-hmm. So that's you want to dive right in. You don't want to tell me how your week's going? You don't want to give me the old rabble?
The rabble. Well, my week's, it's all right, man. You know, it is what it is. I worked all week. It's only halfway through it.
Your mic sounds better. What'd you do?
It does sound better.
You learned, you surpassed your ignorance?
I got a different wire and connected my interface straight into my computer instead of the hub.
We were doing some back and forth troubleshooting with Slava's mic setup, and I told him that gain functions partly through electrical current, and then we found out that his setup was plugged in through a non-powered hub, and now we're trying it this way. And so moving forward, mics should be loud enough.
That will sound a little better.
That's right. We can't worry. We can't. I messed up my own stupid joke. All right.
Yeah. So the week was a week. I don't know, man. It's just work. I feel like this week is just coasting through.
Everybody's got to work. Got to do something.
Yeah.
Unless you have an 85
Podcast
IQ.
is not paying the bills.
That's true. It's not.
85 IQ?
Yeah. So psychological tests have, and actually well, maybe you wouldn't be familiar with this. I was going to say you should be familiar with this, but basically they did studies, and if you have below an 85 IQ, you can't actually do any jobs. And this comes from the United States government, i.e. the Army, where they won't take you if you have below an 85 IQ because they literally don't have a job for you because you're too dumb to be able to do a job.
Wow.
Sorry,
Okay.
Not sorry,
Well,
but like that's...
I'm coasting at a 93 and happy.
That's not true. We took the Big Five personality test, and your intellect, whatever that's based on, which was not a number, but your intellect was higher than mine, and I'm still a little bitter about that.
It's all right.
You know more facts.
I'm okay with it. I'm okay.
Yeah,
with it.
I'm sure you. Yeah.
Listen, Dark Eyes, just know your place. I like to be called Bright Lord Slava from now on.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy, his alarm's gonna wake up every morning. Your wife's gonna be like, "What is that nonsense title? Turn that off."
Yeah.
All right, give us a rundown. What'd you learn this week about Dalinar and Adolin and Kaladin?
Oh goodness. Well, we're not doing rundowns, right?
Well, we can do rundowns. I think it works because we already read it. We're going to discuss it anyway. So I think having the rundown on the front end makes sense. We're just kind of figuring this out. So I think the rundown does make sense for this section we're going through. That said, we are looking at chapters 18 through 27 this section.
This is true. So I read this section fairly quickly because of our recording schedule in recent days. But what stood out for me, maybe you can fill in my rundown. What stood out to me was it slowed down a little bit, but there was these little things that are going on. They're, I think, setting us up for something bigger in the coming chapters. So in the beginning here of 18, we have Aladdin on a date, on a very, very bad date. And he is trying to figure out, by talking to some leathermen, men who work with leather. What's the word for it?
Yeah, no, leathermen.
Leather workers.
Leather workers, leathermen,
Yeah.
a leatherman multi-tool. Never mind.
Yeah. So they're trying to figure out who, if anybody, cut Elokar's saddle. Because in the last chapter or two before, he fell off his horse during the hunt of the chasm fiend. And because he's a paranoid little boy, he thinks somebody's trying to kill him.
Well,
Although he's not convincing anybody.
I mean,
Least of all me.
well, yeah, for sure. But if your dad was killed by assassination, you know, at least some justification there.
Sure. No, I think he has the right to be worried, especially being the son, not only of somebody who's been assassinated, but as Delanar explains to Aladdin later on, that kingdoms are usually at the highest risk with the son of a beloved leader. Because everybody judges the son by the father, and rarely does anybody live up to those expectations. So Adeline is right to be cautious, but I think, and it's said in the book by other characters, and I tend to agree with them, that he is paranoid.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. So you told me a little earlier that you had taken some notes on your Kindle, and you wanted to give this a different swing this time. So take us away.
Just for as a context for the audience, instead of going chapter by chapter, we are going to kind of look at the journeys, for lack of a better term, of the characters in the set of chapters that we're looking at.
Yep.
So the way I went about attempting to stay within that framework is I highlighted some interesting things, at least things that are interesting to me. I highlighted them and took some notes on those things instead of, taking the chapter, kind of writing down what happened to it in my own words, and then going, okay, where's my question? What is my assumption? So I have highlights, and I have portions of the chapters, and then I have those questions and some notes written underneath there. So
Love it.
all right. So the first thing that I thought was interesting, or that I got a kick out of, was Adeline on his date, or lack thereof.
Love a good date, not date.
Yeah, so they're with what's her face?
Janala.
Janala. Yep. Staring right at it. So I thought their interaction, their back and forth on this date, not date, was kind of funny.
Okay.
And it might be just me. So this is something that just stood out to Slava. She's clearly bored on this date, not date. Here's the thing. I'll just read a little bit of it that stood out. Adeline, a feminine voice said from behind him, "You said we were going on a walk." "That's what we're doing."
Wah, wah.
Wah, wah.
Caught him.
Yep. And her retort was, "I had imagined that a walk would involve more walking." So it's silly. I get it. And it might not be what everybody in the audience will be like, "Oh, wow, that's great. Thanks, Slava. That was a great point," on page 295. But for me, those kind of things, they stand out. So Adeline, and we're going to find this out as we read on, as you and I talk on, he's also worried about his father, Delanar. Because his father is having visions during night storms. And these visions are are telling him to unite the kingdoms. They're
Unite them.
Yes. They are visions that involve him convulsing or having fits during these visions.
Bro, epilepsy
And
mods? Come on.
a little bit. And he's also not fighting as much. And so the other folks in this camp are looking to him and going like, well, he was a fighter, right? What was his name?
Blackthorn.
Blackthorn, there it is. So Blackthorn's not the same Blackthorn he was a little bit ago, and because he's babysitting Adeline, he's not fighting. He has these visions. Some people think him mad or weak, and so Adeline is kind of stuck here, right? So he's stuck in between loyalty to his father, but sort of kind of understanding or at least sympathizing with why people are talking the way they're talking. He can't keep down a girl or a courtship to save his life, at least in this part of the story. And as he has all this weight on him, he's still trying to court somebody. So the fact that he took this girl on the walk, actually took her on a expedition to do a mission for the king, that kind of, not only is it funny because I got a little chuckle out of their dialogue, but it kind of shows like the predicament that he's in, to me.
Right.
I'm looking at this and going like, man, this guy's on a date and he has the weight of his father's whatever's going on with him because he doesn't understand it completely. And he doesn't believe the king's saddle was sabotaged. And now he's walking around Leatherworks, and then he goes to what, the equivalent of a church is, and he talks to some religious leaders, and he can't figure out what is going on. So as much as he wants to date, I think dating's in the last thing in his mind. So this is almost perfunctory.
He might be son of a high prince, but he's still trying to he's still trying to peg on the side. He's a young man. He's
yeah, and he is.
He's got appetites,
desires, and wants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Adolin, he's not good with women, but Renarin's worse. We never even see Renarin with a gal.
No. But in this culture, I think Renarin is just set up for failure because he has some sort of blood disease.
Whatever that means.
Whatever that means, prevents him from fighting, and he is shy and awkward.
What do you think though? What with Wit in the last episode, where Wit's making fun of him, and Dalinar's like, "Wit," and then Wit is like, "Dalinar, he's not as fragile as you think he is."
Well, what I think about that is based on what I read further in this section, because as I was reading,
of course,
as I was
waiting for that.
As I was reading that without reading these chapters, I was like, all right, Wit's doing his job. And I never thought of Wit as just some D-bag that just, busts people's chops. He has a place in the king's court, and if we're going to take at face value this culture for what it is, for what Brandon Sanderson sets it up for, that's Wit's job. He makes fun of people. That's it. So, a two-part answer to that question, and part two, I don't have anything concrete to say or anything I can say with confidence, but part one, based on what I read in this section, is Wit is sort of on Dalinar's side, or if he's not on his side directly, he at least believes Dalinar is somebody that Wit can trust, or Wit should, I don't want to say defend, but Wit kind of gives him some intel that is beneficial to Dalinar's politicking.
Politicking?
There we go, yep. Yeah. Politicking. Because I speak English, and I have a high IQ.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
So.
Okay, all right.
And I think, but if we're just going to wax, philosophical here, I think...
Wax and wane for those Cosmere folks. You know what that is?
There you go. No.
Okay.
Wax and I know what the words mean, but I don't know what I'm
referencing. So
what you're referencing, yeah.
We'll get to this eventually, but there are other books in the Cosmere, right? And so there's a trilogy of trilogies, and it's called Mistborn, And Mistborn's probably going to be the first movie that's made, but there's Mistborn 1, 2, and 3, and then that's called Mistborn Era 1, and then there's Mistborn 4, 5, 6, and 7, which is known as Mistborn Era 2, and the characters for Mistborn Era 1 is more of like a Victorian style on a place called Scadrial, and then Mistborn Era 2 is still on Scadrial, but it's like 1,000 years in the future from the first set.
Okay.
And
I remember you
the
telling me
main
about
characters from Era 2 are Wax and Wayne.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm here for the Cosmere folks.
Yeah. If we are to wax and wane philosophical, I think what Wit is saying there, without getting into what I read or didn't read, is
You're just trying not
most
to upset
people, like Renarin.
me. Renarin, yep. Yeah, Renarin, you got it.
Most people like Renarin, just because they have a disability, if you will, or they're shy and quiet, doesn't mean that there are some weaklings. So I think Wit, who's able to observe all three from his vantage point, he might know something that Delinar, who is heavy laden with a lot of stuff, might not see in his son, because he see his son as a boy.
Right.
It's even referenced later in these chapters where he's like, man, I still see him as a little kid, and he's almost 20. So
True. So I want to take a quick side quest here, because I don't think I've told you this before, and I don't know if we've talked about this with the audience at all. So I just want to do a quick side quest. You know what a chiastic structure is, Slava?
yes.
Okay. Can you just give us a quick description of what a chiastic structure is?
So it's usually in the form of a poem, and a chiastic structure is you have 3 points, and you got A, B, C. And so in the first part of the poem, you say A, B, C. And then in the second part of the poem, you say C, B, A. So you make a first point, a second point, you make your third point, you reinforce your third point, you go back to the second point, and you go back to reinforce the first point.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Okay, so the 5 books in the first arc of the Stormlight Archive, I'm going to read them off, and then I'm going to explain something. So the book 1 is Way of Kings. Book 2 is Words of Radiance. Book 3 is Oathbringer, the name of Dalinar's sword. Book 4 is Rhythm of War. Book 5 is Knights of Wind and Truth. That is a pending title because Book 5 is not done yet. But Sanderson has been using a chiastic structure in the titles of the book, because Book 1 is W-O-K, Book 2 is W-O-R, Book 3 is O, Book 4 is R-O-W, and Book 5 is K-O-W-T at the moment. So he's got a chiastic structure going on. The relevance of that, if you know about chiastic structures, is that the main point is the main point. The center point is the main point, right? Now, that's interesting. That's interesting for a lot of reasons. Not a whole lot that we can get into here, because we're reading Book 1 still, and we're only in like the first section or second section of Book 1, right? But it is relevant because the Parshendi actually have a world-building element called, I want to say it's a ketic. I want to say it's a ketic, where it's a chiastic structure, but a ketic is what he calls it in the book. The abbreviations of the first 5 books also form a palindrome of 5 parts being similar in structure to a ketic. W-O-K, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, that is a little side quest here for you, because there's so much more going on in the Cosmere as a whole and the Way of Kings than we know about right now. Do you have any notes on the epigraphs that we saw in this section?
No, only because when I looked at them, I was like, I'm sure there's something to this.
Yeah.
But I promised you, dear reader and listener and fellow podcaster, that I wouldn't read ahead more than what would give me just a general knowledge of the world to help me with the context of what I'm reading. And I felt that if I started digging into this epigraphs, that might ruin it for me. Well, not for me, because I don't care about spoilers. But it might ruin it for this project. I am a man of my word.
Good guy.
So
Good guy.
I didn't I didn't read ahead or didn't explore them. And as I read them, nothing of...
Act with honor,
Nothing.
and honor will aid you.
Exactly. Nothing stood out to me as like, oh, this is worth noting for our episode. And that might be wrong of me, but as I read them, I was like, all right,
No,
that's an epigraph.
It's not wrong of you. It's insider information. Like, the first time you read this through, you go, okay, that's information. I'm sure it's relevant somehow. Authors don't mindlessly put things in. There's a relevance here. I just don't know what it is, right? So I'm going to draw your attention to two of them from chapters 18 and 19, and I'm going to tie them together for reasons that in the future
Okay.
I think you'll figure out. Maybe not this book, but like the future in general. So Ati was once a kind and generous man, and you saw what became of him. Reyes, on the other hand, was among one of the most loathsome, crafty, and dangerous individuals I have ever met. He holds the most frightening and terrible of all the shards. Ponder on that for a time, you old reptile, and tell me if your insistence on non-intervention holds firm, because I assure you, Reyes will not be similarly inhibited.
So that's part of the same epigraph, only spread across 2 chapters.
Perhaps. Most likely.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. It reads like it when you put them together, doesn't it?
Yeah, it certainly does. Doesn't mean it's the case, but
So I'm just gonna point at something here for you so that you can ponder. He holds the most frightening and terrible of all the shards.
so my knowledge of the Cosmere, 17 shards, correct?
Yes.
Now here's a question, and this is going to take us on a little bit of a side quest, but it's for Slava to understand context. So there's 17 shards, but yet in this world, in Roshan, on this planet, it seems that, and I might be answering my own question, there's more than one shard blade and more than one shard plate. Does that mean that each planet on which a shard, one of the 17, landed on, it broke into enough pieces for the Alethi to have numerous blades and plates from that one shard? Or am I off in Cuckoo Banana Town?
Well, two things. First off, my number is wrong. It's actually 16 original shards, 15 being currently known. So that's the first thing. Second thing, you're not right, but you're definitely not wrong.
All right. So, fine. Side quest over. To
Fair
answer your
enough.
question.
Yes.
No, because there's nothing else to say then. And I'm not being
It's
snide.
well, the
that.
problem
I'm
is
just saying
like some of these revelations happen in books 2, 3, and 4, and so it's just like,
yeah, I get it.
yeah,
Doesn't matter.
yeah.
We're good.
That's
All right.
this is the fun and the nuance of like part of the reason I think that these books have like really picked up with Sanderson is strictly because this is one massive multi-book puzzle.
Right. Well, and again, broken freaking record. I've said this, I think now at
Here we
29
go.
times.
I'm gonna start. We should
The
start counting.
The pace. I know people might complain that it takes him 2 chapters to get to a thing or to explain something. But to me, and I know this is all subjective and personal, but to me, the pace of this writing wants me, makes me want to read into book 3, 4, well, 2, 3, 4, and onward, because stuff like this, if done well, and I think Sanderson does it well, it keeps you interested.
Correct.
It's not like, great, I know about a thing that I won't find out
Right, because he did
until
an
I read
encyclopedia
chapter
dump.
34.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't do encyclopedia dumps. I mean, even with the epigraphs that we just looked at, he gives you a slice of a something. You know, it could be a letter from one person to another.
Exactly. So, to answer your question, what do I think the shard is? Is that kind of what you were sort of the question in between the lines? This terrible shard?
I'm gonna take the man behind the curtain over here. I'm drawing your attention to the fact that whatever this is talking about is addressing that Ati and Reyes are somehow relevant to shards.
Okay. So Ati and Reyes are deities then in this.
Maybe.
they're at least connected to deity, because who else but
at least
who else but the top echelons of society or deity have this,
right? Well, and so there the two other assumptions.
Parshendi have a shard bearer.
That's true.
And Parshendi are considered, beasts almost by these. Well, literally beasts. They're called beasts, so they're considered like uncouth beasts by the Alethi.
Right.
But yeah, they have a shard bearer.
There's two other things about this epigraph, and then I'll stop. Person A is writing to person B. Neither of them, person A is addressing two other characters, Ati and Reyes. So we can make the assumption that that's not the person writing, and it's also not the person receiving it, right?
Good assumption.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not talking about yourself in the third person. Anyway, I won't belabor the point. It's a fun quest that we will continue down.
Sounds good.
Bring us forward. Where do Adolin and Dalinar? I'm catching the tism over here.
Adolin, wait. Ask the question again so I can get my bearings.
Bring us forward.
Bring us forward. All right. So after this date, Adolin goes to talk to a priest and to share with this priest. Yeah. To share with this priest his worries about his dad's visions and fits that he has during these high storms.
You ever had a vision, Slava?
No, but I've had. Okay, side quest. I have to give me a second. I have to set it up the right way. So bear with me. I gotta Google a date, and I will tell you a story.
Is it about strawberries? You pull up. Yeah. Okay. You pull up your thing. I'm going to tell the audience a little story about a time when you and I were sitting on a couch, and Slava's just going on about this long joke about strawberries. And at the end of it, the plot twist of this joke is that there's no end. It's just a nonsensical story that doesn't mean anything. And I was like waiting for a punchline, and I was like, "You're ridiculous."
Well, in the vein, or in the light, or in the tradition, or all three, or Norm Macdonald, I told the most pointless, stupid, nonsensical joke, which ended with strawberries were a big part of it, but it ended with the moral of the story is look both ways before crossing a street. Or the street, a street, any street. So, on the night of August 30th, in 1997, I had one of the most vivid dreams that I've ever had in my life.
Ooh.
And
I don't know if I've ever heard this before.
No, you haven't. I think my wife and one other person have heard this.
And now the internet.
Forever.
Spill that tea.
So on August 30th, 1997, I am a month away from my 17th birthday. I go to bed, and I had one of the most vivid dreams in my life. Now, I've always had, since a kid, very lucid, very vivid dreams. I'm often in control of my dreams. I often know that I'm dreaming, and I can play around with the world that I'm in my dream. And they're always colorful and crazy and out there. So anyway, on this particular night, I'm dreaming, and I'm sitting in the back of a car that's speeding down a highway. And for some reason, I know that it's a black car, a black sedan. And there's a woman next to me with short blonde hair. And we're speeding. There's no conversation. It's kind of like, it almost seems in the dream that the windows are all open and the wind's blowing in my hair, and we're speeding down the highway. Lights and the city lights, the lights of the other cars, it's night, are flying by me. Exactly. Starry Night. It almost looks like the Starry Night by Van Gogh. So these things are happening in the dream. And in this car, in this dream, I'm feeling a bit of angst, right? And I don't know why, but this woman next to me is laughing and talking.
Probably because
she's not
you're
really
17.
talking to me. Yeah, but it's not a sex dream. It's just I'm in the dream, There's nothing sexy about it. It's just me and this woman, and she's having a good time, but I feel angst. And then there is, I can't really say it's a crash of the car, but something happens where the woman's face turns from having a smile to the most horrible grimace possible. And her face contorts and everything goes black. And that's it. I wake up, go about my business, and get ready, and I go outside to go hang out. And what I see on the front door, like the stoop of the front door, is the local newspaper. And the half page is folded over, so the top of the half page, and it says Princess Diana dead. And it shows her black car all mangled. Now, what I'm not saying is that I dreamt or it was a premonition or a vision of her death. I'm not claiming that at all. But that was as close to anything of a vision that I think I ever had. I fully admit, before you and the internet, coincidence. Because I claim no psychic powers.
Well, here's the thing, though.
But that was, how do I say this? Let me back up. I claim no psychic powers.
Uh-huh.
Right? But that was as close to a vision as I've ever had in my life. And I actually, as a kid, I kind of brushed it off. I thought, I was like, well, that's weird and freaky and creepy. I'm going to go about my day. But as I got older, I looked back on it and I was like, coincidence or not, that was kind of more than just creepy.
Interesting.
That's my story about visions. There was no high storms that night. I am not a bright lord.
I mean, you'd fit it. Your eyes aren't dark.
They're bright green.
Yeah, so you would be a bright. Yeah. You'd be a bright lord.
Yeah, and I've never met Princess Diana in my life. Thought she was a pretty cool person.
You think the royal family killed her?
No, I don't think the royal family killed her. I have a hard time buying conspiracy theories that place all power in some strange cabal. I think it's all horse crap. What I think, and I'm going to quote George Carlin, and I'm going to paraphrase him, actually. I'm not going to quote him. There's no cabal. There's no meetings. If there's anything that the governments of the world do, or the elite of the world do, is they all know the game, they know the end goal, and they work towards it in their own pace, in their own time, and in their own way. And if you want to tell me that, okay, I believe it. But if you're going to tell me that the royal family in cahoots with somebody else...
Oh, no, I consider it like an inter-family mafia hit.
Oh, okay. That maybe... I mean, I wouldn't put it past anybody, but I don't think so.
She was doing stuff they weren't on board with, right? Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah. No, that's
did you
fair.
see the World Economic Forum? Like, to just like some of the nonsense, like.
No. I get that these people say and do weird things, and so I think I misunderstood you.
You ever see Eyes Wide Shut? Anyway.
Yes. Yeah. But here's the thing: in the world of Eyes Wide Shut, I would say none of those people have like midnight meetings. How are we going to subvert the culture? How are we going to, find new flesh for our parties? I think everybody knows what they're going to do, and everybody just does what they're supposed to.
All right.
So, anyway, no, I don't think the family killed her. I think a combination of drinking, an inept driver, paparazzi being assholes, and possibly a foul actor or a bad actor using those things to maybe cause the catastrophe? Yes. Was it an outright hit that was like planned and executed in some mafia-esque precision? No, I don't believe that. And just not enough evidence for me.
Fair enough. All right. Side quest over. Bring us back to Dalinar. Having visions in the high storm. That's where we were at.
Right. So let's fast forward a little bit. Well, let's not. Let's just end this point real quickly and then fast forward. So, Adolin, I'm going to say it right. I'm going to get these names right by the end of this quest. Adolin gets back from the leather workers, goes to the priest, continues to annoy his girlfriend, and tells him what
serious.
They're not that serious, but still, he annoys the girl he's trying to make his girlfriend. She's the flavor of the week. Fair enough. But he still annoys the flavor of the week. He talks to Teshev, one of the priests, and Teshev is also concerned because Delanor is having these fits, he's having these visions, and supposedly the stuff that he's saying or the things that, the positions that he's taking, what he comes away with from these visions is almost blasphemous, at least to some people. So Adolin is concerned, talks to Teshev, and Teshev kind of is doing some fence sitting, goes, yeah, that's bad. It's definitely bad, but you shouldn't say that's bad because he's your father and he's a bright lord. So just keep a lookout. Like, you should be concerned, but I wouldn't be too concerned. So that's the next thing that happens, right? And fast forward past that, you have Dalinar politicking. He has these visions. In the visions, presumably the Almighty is telling him to unite the kingdoms, because all these kingdoms are fighting the Preshendi, 10 of them, but they're not united in anything except their fight against the Preshendi. So Dalinar is trying to protect his nephew. He's trying to protect his sons. He's trying to protect his position in some way because people are talking about him and his fits and him not fighting and him being a coward and him being a madman. So he's politicking. He's trying to politic with the High Princess. He's trying to politic with his nephew. He wins some, he loses some. And in the midst of this, he has another vision, which is very interesting.
Right. Well, so we haven't even talked about Kaladin yet, which we've got some chapters with him too, so.
Yeah, we're just focusing on the royal family now, but that's Delavar.
Yeah, so Dalinar, chapter 19,
Dalinar
has this vision where he's sent to like a different world, a strange place, one of his visions, right? And he hears the same voice, in previous visions that he suspects to be the Almighty, continuing to tell him to unite him. But then, in his real day-to-day life, he's getting yelled at by his son, for good measure, I think. For
good measure, yeah, no, it was deserved, because Dalinar, for all his honor and duty-bound efforts, he kind of lets some things fall to the side. He kind of acts like a little bit of like an ass at times, And I know that's maybe not the right word. He's not acting like an ass, but he's not acting...
He's got his own priorities.
He's got his own priorities, and if he is going to say he is duty-bound, he's letting certain duties overshadow completely other duties.
Right. So, and previously we saw Dalinar try to have Elhokar, his nephew, the king, appoint him as High Prince of War, right?
Mm-hmm.
Elhokar says, no, not going to do that. They're going to hang me if I do that. And then what do we see happen?
Well, he doesn't say no exactly, right? He says, no, they're going to hang me, but you know what? I'll think about it. We'll figure it out. I think you're on the right track. Not exactly the king's words, but he gives Dalinar hope. And then he doesn't fulfill his word even to think about it. He just gives Sadeas a position of High Prince of Information.
Right. So then Sadeas ends up being given the task to investigate what happened to the king's...
Can I make him a saddle?
Saddle, thank you.
Can I make an assumption right here?
This is the whole journey before destination.
All right. I'm going to go on a limb and say that nobody but good old nephew cut that saddle.
Wait, you're saying that the king cut his own saddle?
My assumption, his paranoia,
uh-huh.
his immaturity and inability to lead well, which his mother even says somehow, in not so many words.
Woof. You've made it when your mom's like, He's a terrible king. Thanks,
Yes.
Mom.
So, because nobody believes him, and because he's an impulsive child, that's revealed to me, at least, when he like rushes off from
Oh my God. Yeah.
from the group during the chasm hunt. Anyway, and because Dalinar doesn't believe him, he's paranoid as hell. He needs Dalinar on his side, and when Dalinar doesn't take it seriously, the cut strap, he uses Sadeas, who he knows is at very political language, is at odds with Dalinar. He tries to set them against each other, maybe even unwittingly, or like the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
He knows.
I'm not sure what he's doing.
He knows.
He knows.
Literally fought in front of each other when
Right,
Sadeas insulted Renarin, and
Yeah.
Dalinar was like, "Surely, Sadeas, you did not just insult another Bright Lord in front of the king, which then would mean that I'd challenge you to a duel. Surely I must have misheard you." And Sadeas was like,
Right.
"Okay, yeah, I'll back down."
Yeah. So I don't think the king is smart enough to see the intricacies in his own chess moves, right? Or he doesn't think them through to their full conclusion, to their end. But I think he's paranoid enough and knows enough about how to maybe move some chess pieces on this in this political arena, where he goes, okay, I'm going to cut my thing. That's going to get Dalinar to believe me. But Dalinar doesn't respond in the manner the king desires, which proves what kind of child he is, because it's going to take a while to investigate this.
Mm-hmm.
So how I got to this point is working backwards. I'm telling it in actual time, but I worked backwards to get to this point. So he cuts the strap. It doesn't work to his satisfaction. And he goes, all right, I got this guy Sadeas. Goodness, my names. Please don't kill me, Cosmerians. I'm going to butcher all these names for the rest of the episode.
English isn't his first language. Don't add him in the comments.
Also, English isn't my first language.
How would you say some of these names in Russian? Whatever, we'll cover that later.
Yeah. So he cuts the strap because he's a petulant child. He doesn't get, well, not petulant child. He cuts the strap
No,
because
that's
he's
fair. No, that's super
he's
fair.
a petulant child for other reasons. He cuts the strap because he is paranoid, and this is him acting out, wanting not attention, but attention to this particular slice of his paranoia.
Yeah.
He doesn't get what he wants.
He wants to be
becomes
validated.
petulant.
As assassin.
Right. He
Whatever.
wants to be validated. This is where he becomes a petulant child. He goes, I know Sadeas, my goodness, Sadeas and Dalinar don't get along.
Right.
I'm going to stick it to Sadeas. I'm going to stick it to Dalinar. And Sadeas, I know, because of his animosity towards Dalinar, he will find out the truth, even if it means railroading Dalinar. Working that backwards, I'm like, he probably cut the stupid strap.
Okay. All right. So that's your assumption.
So
Noted.
that's my assumption.
Marked. Got it. There we go. All right. So moving forward, Adolin and Dalinar are in the map room. Adolin yells at Dalinar in public about his visions. This is a political, high society. That is not something you do. Not okay. Not okay. And then later, Dalinar goes out to try to capture a gem heart, and he's killing these Parshendi. And I'm very broad stroking here with these chapters, right? But giving the audience some context. And then he's killing these Parshendi, and he's living into the thrill, and he gets this sudden stabbing of conscience for killing Parshendi, the Blackthorn himself, the mass murdering killer of who knows how many wars. You don't earn a war nickname like the Blackthorn for no reason. So clearly he's earned it somehow. Now he's having second thoughts? What's that about?
Yeah. Well, I think that's about the visions, right? Because, well, it's more than about the visions. The visions are part of it. He also is beginning to see, because he's not fighting, he's taking care of his nephew. He's directly involved in day-to-day politics in the war camp, which is now, Capital 2.0, because everything's been moved to the war camps, even some of the warriors' families. He sees that this is a strain in the kingdom, the weakness of the king. He sees that. And he begins to think, have we not avenged my brother's death? Is that the only reason we're fighting? The sense that you get as the reader is, so there's these chasms, Parshendi attack, Alethi respond, people die on both sides, Parshendi usually run away, at least the way, up to chapter 27, the way it seems, whether it's a tactical retreat or they're just losing. In any case, they retreat, and I think Delanor's looking at all this from his vantage point going, this is absurd. And then he's having these visions, and the visions are telling him to unite them, because the only thing uniting them now is the war of the Parshendi, which, as the political figure that he is, in the place he finds himself in, he thinks is silly. So there's this message to unite them, because they're only united about something that he is beginning to see as maybe fruitless.
It is fruitless. They're literally playing cat and mouse for no reason. They went out there with a reason originally, and Dalinar is totally correct on this. Like, we're not doing anything. The whole reason we came out here, we're just jerking the gherkin at this point, like not doing a whole lot, because they lost sight of it, and they're just like petty squabbles. They took their high society and brought it to the Shattered Plains of all places.
Just to kill a bunch of Parshendi.
Just for no reason.
And at this point, I imagine they've killed enough of them to have some sort of vengeance lust fulfilled. At least for some of them, it should be. How many Parshendi do you need to kill before the vengeance pact is fulfilled? Because at this point, I'm in agreement with Delanar that why? What was the point at killing the Parshendi now? At this point in history, why are we trying to kill all of them?
Yeah.
But anyway, I think we've spent enough time in the halls of the Alethi leaders.
Well, and I'll make one more point, and then you can move us forward. You said it was a little slower, this section, right? And that's kind of why I chopped it up like this, because we get some power plays in the episode we just released, and Kaladin ends that one with taking Rock's place, and he goes, "I'm bridge leader. It's my privilege to run at the front," right? And there's some action there. Well, now we have to rebuild some more, or not rebuild, but we have to go and focus on some of the other points of view with Dalinar and Adolin and over the Shattered Plains. And I mean, we know something's going to happen with Shallan coming up in the next episode, because we didn't see her this episode. It's like she's clearly a main point of view. So, like, what is going on in the world that is Roshar, and how is that relevant? At least Dalinar, Adolin, and Kaladin are all on the same side of the earth fighting in the Shattered Plains, right? Like, we at least have some semblance. But the thing is, Kaladin's trapped under the thumb of Sadeas in his bridge cruise, which is not the place you want to be. Let me tell you.
No, not at all. Because Sadeas is, a pragmatist at best, right? So for him, these bridge crews are just a means to an end. And I'm being kind in using that word, because he sees no value in these people's lives whatsoever.
Yeah.
Because even if they're the wretches of society, there's like the way he treats them is even below that. Right. Yeah.
It's nonsense.
Yeah, so now that we left the map room in the halls of the Alethi royalty.
The first chapter we get with Kaladin, we're getting a flashback again, right?
Well, yeah, that's right. I was going to say, we flash backward to 7 years ago, and as the flashback opens, he is trying to save a girl who had fallen, and he is not able to save her because he's probably just a child and not skilled enough as a surgeon to save a person who's lost as much blood as this little girl did, right? So Cal does not save her, and he is
mortified,
crestfallen,
yeah, good word, crestfallen.
This reveals a little bit of his character that we see in him as an adult. because he's 13. And what I found interesting was, just as he's prone to melancholy, he is also duty-bound. He knows it's his obligation to save this girl.
Yeah, because he's son of a surgeon. Yeah.
Right. And he does not. He ends up failing that. What Liren, his father, says is interesting here. This is something I highlighted. You have to learn when to care, son, Liren said softly, and when to let go. You'll see. I had similar problems when I was younger. You'll grow calluses. And this is a good thing, Cal thought, another tear trickling down his cheek. You have to learn when to care and when to let go. In the distance, Harl, which is the girl's father, continued to wail. We have this glimpse into Kaladin's character even as a child, which he carries with him into adulthood. He binds himself to people. And that's, I think, why he would save the kids on the battlefield, or he would look for kids who were maybe left alone, maybe it looked like they didn't have anybody, maybe they were can't get right. And he took
Can't get right.
Yeah, he took if not pity, he took sympathy. And I think those two words are very different. He took sympathy on them and he wanted to help them. And it obviously comes from watching his father and maybe in some sense this incident, because it's not in here just for grins.
Right.
Sanderson wasn't bored writing chapter 20.
He's had an easy life, Kaladin. You know, Bridge 4 is the first rough thing he's ever had to go through.
Yeah. Yep. Poor Cal. Never had a problem until Bridge 4.
It's basically Paris Hilton over here.
Yeah. A much more muscular and manlier Paris Hilton. I don't know if Paris Hilton can carry herself with a spear as good as Cal, but...
Probably not.
Yeah.
Coach Purse,
No
though.
hate, Paris. We love you.
Well...
We don't hate you, at least.
Yeah, that's
Maybe
probably
Jonathan
true.
hates you.
Okay, yeah. Some no-name on the internet. I'm one of your biggest haters. Grr.
No.
Yeah, so we start with Kaladin on a flashback, and then we have a chapter called Why Men Lie. Kaladin is post-bridge run, because the last thing we had hit from him is he's with Rock, and he kicks him out of the thing, and he goes, I'm bridge leader, it's my privilege to run at the front, and they come back. He brings back the sick, and he's debating on whether or not to even get up from his bed. And then he finally kind of tunes into the present, and he's like, oh, the other bridgemen are watching to see if I'd get up or not. And continue being the bridge leader, continue to train, continue to find purpose in the midst of suffering. Which, side quest, did you ever read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl?
About 10 years ago, yes.
Was that your first read-through?
First and only.
Okay. Yeah. So I think I've read it 3 times now. I try to make it a habit to read it every year. I don't always get to it. For those not in the know, Viktor Frankl was a Jew in World War II. He was put into the Holocaust camps, and he survived 4 of them. And he escaped death about a dozen times. Correct me if my number's wrong there, but there were literally moments, and he gets out, right? So he wrote this book, and he gets out of the Holocaust camps, and he realizes that in the midst of suffering, you can still find purpose and joy, even though it's tough. He says in one of the later chapters, he says, I met some good people who were guards on the walls, so Nazi guards, and I met some bad people who were Nazi guards. I met some good people who were prisoners with me, and I met some bad people who were prisoners with me. And it's like, this guy literally endured suffering. His family died, his friends died, he should have died, he didn't. And he got out, and he left the camp with this level of deep soul wisdom, I guess I'd call it, about suffering and how you get to put purpose to your suffering. Suffering's inevitable, but you get to put purpose to it regardless of how bad it is. And Kaladin is doing the same thing. He's taken this really terrible situation. Now, it's not exactly as bad as the Holocaust, but it's pretty bad, right? Like, they're literally running to their deaths. So
well, your suffering doesn't have to be as bad as the Holocaust or the American, slave trade.
Yeah,
or
that's fair.
Pick any, atrocity in the last, let's say, 1,000 years, right? Let's go back that far. Your suffering doesn't have to be that bad for it to be suffering. If you are
Good point.
a 9-year-old kid, right? Let's just say a 9-year-old kid in the suburbs, you have want for nothing, you're fed, you're protected, but your best buddy, your dog Sparky, gets hit by a car.
And then your bike gets
Your
stolen.
world, or whatever, just forget the
Both.
bike gets stolen, just the dog. Let's leave with the dog. For
All
this
right,
point, let's
fine.
leave
I'm
with the
just
dog.
trying to add some suffering on here.
So the dog is dead. Maybe to anybody else would be like, yeah, that's kind of sad. The kid's dog died, but I don't know how to feed my kid. The guy across town is thinking, yeah, I'm so sorry your dog died. I don't know what to feed my child, though. Both are suffering. And maybe in the grand scheme of things, you can assign value, points to those suffering, but each one is still suffering. So when we meet Kaladin here, he is in a world of hurt. No matter, whether he had a kid or not, irrespective of him having puppies, like, this guy is in a world of hurt. He's in a bad place. He's betrayed. He's a slave. And he almost lost the will to live himself.
Yep.
But he finds it, and he wants to encourage or strengthen, or both, the men around him.
Well, he finds it in taking up responsibility. And this is a direct reflection of being human. When you're in the midst of suffering, when you're in the midst of despair and depression, and I've had depression before, if you find a way to latch on to some sort of responsibility, it can be doing your dishes daily. It doesn't have to be big. But if you choose responsibility, you pick up that burden yourself, it is a small sense of purpose. And having a sense of purpose is a counteractment to despair, depression, and being a broken human soul.
Right. And I think we touched upon this in our previous episode when we talked about making your bed. Just start with making your bed. And how, for me, making my bed every morning helps set the day.
Yeah. Strike that first thing off the list.
Yeah, and I'm not in, any horrible place in my life. I mean, do I wish my life was different? Did I ever imagine that at my age I'd be doing what I'm doing and living the life that I'm living? No. Is it some of it disappointing? Yes. But I make decent money. I eat good food. I have a very good partner for a wife. I have enough free time to do a podcast and to just ramble on the internet.
He eats really well. I'm going to interrupt you again real quick. He sends me photos. You should go follow his Instagram, his chef Instagram. What is it? Chef's Slavas?
It's at Chez Slavas. So Chez Slavas. At Chez Slavas on Instagram.
The man, for fun, Slava for fun, bought a French cookbook and is memorizing it and learning to be a classically trained French chef because that's what he does for fun. So he sends me these photos of this is what I'm making for dinner, and I'm like, I'm face deep in a half a sloppy Whopper that's oozing disgusting mayo, and I'm like, wow, that looks really good. He's like, what are you eating? And I go, this. And it's just Burger King nonsense or Taco Bell. And he's like, wow, that's nice.
Well, your little interruption is making my point. in the midst of even the troubles I have now as somebody who is in a good place and financially secure and all those things I just mentioned, I have enough time and money to spend on escoffier. So if anybody wants to train themselves at do it yourself at home, French culinary training, buy a book called Escoffier. He's the French guy who started what we know as French cuisine. So back to my point. I have enough money and time not only to do that, but to pursue a podcast in the hopes that it will turn into something, right? Not just like, I'm just blathering on the internet. If it doesn't, I won't be too sad because other things will come up. But right now, I still have enough time and money to sit here with you, we both do, and talk to the people on the internet.
Talk to the people on
the
the
internet.
internet.
Not everybody has this. Like, there's people working 3 jobs just to pay rent.
Been there.
Oh, yeah.
Been there.
Me too.
Gotten kicked out of places because I couldn't pay $100 in rent. $100. That's it. All inclusive, $100. Couldn't afford it. I have been poor and destitute before, and it is not a great place to be.
Not at all. Not at all.
Which brings us back to Caledon.
Yay, Catalan. Bridge 4.
Yay, catalytic converters.
Oh, goodness. So he gets up because he needs to, and later on he doesn't run away. And you know me, I like to jump back and forth. So he gets up this morning, and a couple of mornings from now, he doesn't run away, although it's tempting for him to run away, because he has an obligation. He has a duty to these men now. And he doesn't want to disappoint them, and he doesn't want to abandon them.
You skipped ahead a little bit.
While you were sneezing, I saw you on the screen. I admitted.
I muted it so the people wouldn't hear.
I admitted that I'm skipping ahead to make a point that this day starts with him, duty bound to these men, and then at the end of the week, which is picked up in a couple of chapters, when he's thinking about running away, he goes, "No, I am still duty bound to these men."
And then back to the past, he just after he chooses to get up, he does, we'll call it the impossible. He unites 2 members of Bridge 4. Better than Dalinar, I might say, because Caledon has actually united at least a couple people. Dalinar has not. But it could be
gotten outplayed. He's gotten outplayed.
Yeah, it could be the status in life. You know, the bridgemen don't really have anything going on, so they're just like, sure, well, I guess I'll follow you or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he encourages Teft and Rock. We get names of 2 bridgemen.
Right.
Teft and Rock to commit to helping the sick. And then also he gets Gaz to give him stone gathering duty, and tells Rock and Teft to come with him, and then they actually gather knobweed reeds to make the antiseptic that the apothecary wouldn't sell to him because it's too expensive.
Yeah, that's how he saves that man's life. Prevents rot spren. Which, again, these spren they fascinate me. Where do these spren come from? Because there's rot spren, there's anger spren, there's...
That's a great question.
Spren.
Where do the spren come from?
They're obviously created beings, right? They're not...
They have to be, right? They're in the realm with them. They're seen. So interesting. Where do spren come from? The world may never know.
Well...
They do, but not at this point.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
Speaking of spren, Scylla's now attached to Caledon. She's helping him find the wormweed.
Wormweed. Yep, that's what the kids smoke these days. Wormweed.
Well, what did you call it?
Knobweed.
You know, huh? Knobweed. Same thing.
Hey, man, you got that wormweed?
No, I got knobweed, which sounds worse.
You're everything that's wrong with America. Immigrants coming in and taking our jobs.
But you're
going to have to cut that
dark
out.
humor and your... Well, even Norm Macdonald, whose humor I try to emulate sometimes by telling you 4-hour jokes. He's from Canada, so your anti-immigrant point stands, I suppose. So Scylla's helping. Forget that. Forget I said anything. I retract my statement. Scylla's helping Caledon, right? She's helping him find knobweed, and she's seems to be looking out for him because when he's trying to sell the knobweed, after milking it, he tries to sell it to the apothecary person.
Apothecary.
You said
Lunamore Rock.
That guy. Yeah. So he tries to sell it to him, and he almost gets screwed. But not directly because of Syl, but Syl picks up on it at least, so that shows that she's looking out for him.
Yep.
He realizes that
somehow.
the apothecary, all of them, there's more than one, are taking advantage of the army to some degree. Or at least in Cal's eyes. I would say they're making the best of their situation, and who cares?
Yeah.
They probably could do it a little better job of it, but they're in a predicament where they need to make money. They're charging what they're charging, so it is what it is. But the apothecary almost screws Cal, but Cal comes out on top in this situation too. He's able to make a deal with him, saying that he'll give him this knobweed juice, milk, whatever.
Yep.
For
one
half
sky
of
mark.
what he sells, which is like 2 months' salary or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, something around there. It's like more than a few weeks' salary.
Yep.
So he's now, I don't know if he's made friends with Gaz. I would never.
We wouldn't get that. Yeah, I wouldn't go that far.
No, not at all, actually. But he has Gaz on his payroll to a degree. Like he's getting something from Gaz. He has motivated some of the men. He'll motivate more of them when they go down the chasm. And he's now accomplished another task. He's made an alliance, if you will, with this apothecary.
So, you went to the last chapter. So we're going to go back a little bit. But, because it's not, I think the arcs work better, right? But, so he sells the knobweed oil, gets one sky mark, then they get chasm duty, or maybe it happens just before that. But they're down in chasm duty, and then we see the guys heckling Kaladin. But Kaladin has already united Teft and Rock to be his go-to guys. And they're going down there and collecting fallen soldiers' armor and spears and blah, 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 blah. And then what happens?
Well, Kaladin sees a spear in the ground, and something overtakes him, and he begins to... Well, what will be the word for it in our context?
He runs a kata.
Yeah, he runs a kata.
Starts spinning it around.
Right, so doing... oh my goodness, what is the word? There's a word for it.
Practice?
It's not... the word describes somebody practicing with a weapon. But what? So he begins to practice with it. Let's go with that. So he begins to practice with it, and he wins over, or at least shuts the mouths of some of his detractors. Because everybody still thinks of him as just a slave who is pretending to be a deserter, and just some guy who thinks that's better than them, that he's better than them. But he proves to them that he's not just a slave or a deserter, but he fights like nobody they've ever seen.
Right. And then... Go for it.
We even get a little flashback or a memory of him and his trainer. And his trainer even was surprised at Cal's ability.
Tux. Yep. And then Kaladin uses the money that he got from the Skymark to go buy a cauldron.
Yeah. And him and Rock make some stew for the soldiers. Bridgemen, yep. But
he does that because he knows they don't have a whole lot of time. And you know what? It works.
It does.
It works.
Yep.
So, questions, assumptions at the moment? What do you got for us?
No questions. We've been talking for an hour 20. So, no questions. Assumptions, I have a few. Let me gather my notes. All right. So, assumptions. All this will not go unnoticed. Gaz, being the skeeve that he is, might forgo the some of the spheres that he's getting from Cal, or a sphere that he's getting from Cal. And it might not be Gaz, but everything that Kaladin is doing will not go unnoticed. And I'm going to make a positive assumption. I think it will work out, or at least on the surface, it will seem like it will work out for Cal. I don't think he's going to be punished for this.
Maybe.
He might make it out of Bridge 4, but where he makes
what makes you say that?
The vibes is the same
The
thing
vibes.
when we talk.
Okay. The vibes.
The vibes. Like, I think I don't know, it's not going to be probably in the next couple of chapters, but my assumption is in this book, like that we're reading in book 1, he will make it out of Bridge 4. And that will seem like a victory, and he won't be necessarily punished, although maybe Gaz and some others will screw with him in the intermediary here. But he will get out of Bridge 4. That's the prime point of the assumption. And although it will seem like a win, he's going to be in a more precarious place. That's the assumption I'm making.
Interesting.
Because and I'll tell you why.
Oh, okay.
He is making alliances, and he's helping the men, and he is causing commotion that will not be unnoticed by the leaders. Beyond Gaz. Forget Gaz. Gaz is irrelevant. He's a piece of garbage.
I mean, Kaladin even said himself, he's like, Rock is like, you'll win them over in a couple weeks. And Kaladin's like, we don't have a couple weeks. We're Bridgeman. We'll literally die tomorrow.
Exactly. So that's driving Cal to do what he's doing. And that's it. We don't need to belabor the point any longer. He will be noticed by people above Gaz, and it'll turn for him, but because we already established the fact this is the beginning of the story, there's suffering ahead for Cal.
Of course. Well, so Kaladin used to be part of the class that, well, he's a classist, not racist. That's what it is. Classist. He used to be second Nod, which was very, very high up for a Dark Eyes, his family. So, yeah, it's a little hard to get back up to that when you've got Shashglyph on your forehead dictating that you're dangerous. But who knows? I mean, clearly something will happen, and maybe he'll die. Maybe he'll die, and we'll go find out where Spren come from.
I don't believe you. That's subterfuge. I call subterfuge.
Well,
not subterfuge. What's that word? Not sleight of hand. I cannot speak English for the life of me.
Well, we know
Every time
that.
I'm trying to make an interesting point.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, what's that word? One word. I just need one word.
I just re-listened to our first episode of Stormlight, and I asked you, what are the most important words a man can say? And you said, I don't know. You're setting me up for something. And I said, well, at the end of this episode, why don't you tell us? And we never went back to that. So I want to go back to that now.
Okay.
What are the most important words a man can say? That's the end of this episode. Go.
I will do better.
What?
I will do better.
You looked it up.
I didn't look it up. I came across it.
You cheated, is what you did.
I did not.
You did cheat.
Well, I told you that I read ahead for context.
The most important words a man can say. If I must fall, I will rise each time a better man. Anyway, thanks for tuning into this episode of SideQuest, where Slava doesn't listen to me and he robs himself of joy from discovering things in the narrative. Tune in next week where we discuss the 4th episode of The Way of Kings, and we look at chapter 28, interludes 4, 5, and 6, and all the way up through chapter 34. We're plugging along.
Goodness, yes we are. And I promise, Jonathan, I will do better.
I don't believe you.
Goodbye, good people.